Let us call to order the June 2nd regular meeting for the Harrison County Board of Education. At this time, I ask that we all stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to, before we get started and all, I don't know whether you all have heard or not, but we are really among royalty here tonight. And with that having been said, Todd, Dr. Bench, could you stand up for a minute, please? Just stand up for a minute.
What do you got?
Todd? Thank you, Todd.
All right. This brings us to our special recognitions and presentations. We have tonight with us a group of people that are under new business, but I think if there's no objection, we could move them to special recognitions and presentations where they need to be. We have Mr. Patsy Treecost, we have Delegate Tim Miley, we have Senator Mike Romano, Senator Facemeyer, and I see some other delegates in the House this evening, Ben Queen. So at this point in time, you guys, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, thank you. I think that we're here tonight, it's good because,
Could you give the mic,
right here's the mic.
the mic, please? I'm old, I'm hard of hearing.
Thanks, Katie. You know, we're here tonight, really, Delegate Miley and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about what we've learned in this crisis we've had with this pandemic. And one of the things we came to an understanding was, and we both had it in mind, that we now know that culture is going to change, and now we need to focus on what we can do to make it better. And we realize that in Harrison County, with our opportunity with jobs and education, the great job that you already do, and the blessing that we have of so many jobs here in this region because of Interstate 79 and 50 crisscrossing through us. One of the things that we got to put a full court press on and work together is to develop a fiber optic broadband service. Quite frankly, we've got to be able to work from home. We've got to be able to educate from home. And as far as we're concerned, when we talk amongst ourselves, whether it's Delegate Queen, Delegate Miley, the two senators, we're behind. And there's no excuse anymore for being behind. And we can't keep using the excuse, well, we're just West Virginia. Well, we are just West Virginia, but it's ours. And we want to be able to have a major impact here. And with the roadways the way that they are, as I earlier mentioned, we know that we have the potential to touch many lives and the opportunity here to educate. And education evolves not just for your career, but to continue a quality of life, to keep you, to be able to raise a family, and then they'll be able to work here and provide for your family. And it's through education that we know that our best opportunity against substance abuse exists. So what we're looking to do and talk to you about, and I'll let the others add more to it, is that we've got to focus on the opportunity right now to get fiber optic cable in Harrison County and the region. Remember, we have a situation here with our two senators here and the delegates, because they cover more than one county, unlike a commissioner does, but that we can feed off of each other. The better Lewis does, the better Harrison does. The better Harrison does, the better Marion does. And that's what we've got to do. As far as I'm concerned, it's simple. If you have electricity, you should have clean water, and you should have internet. And it's as simple as that. And we will continue to lag behind until we have that quality of life here. So I'll let the others chime in. I just want to get a head start, and that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Just to follow up with what Patsy said, he and I have been talking about this for a while now, and we realize that the pandemic may have created an opportunity for us. I think a lot of the country is going to be reset in how work and employees are going to be performing their jobs. And so I think it now puts West Virginia at the same point where it puts so many other states in terms of enticing people to come here to live and work, because now they're not, even if they could work at home from their apartment in Manhattan, they'd got all the benefits of New York City. But now they're realizing that being that close to everybody is not such a good thing. And so we believe that if we expand and enhance fiber optic and broadband here in not just this county but our state, it will put us leaps and bounds ahead of so many other states. And I think there's an opportunity to do it. Quite frankly, Patsy and I started this conversation some time ago, but just last week, I learned for the first time, and I've got educated on it more just over the past 24 hours by Drew Pomeroy, who we asked to come here. But just last week, I learned that Doddridge County, and again, this is going to sound elitist, but it's Doddridge County, is going to put internet, high-speed fiber internet, into every home of every student in that county. Now, I know they have money from the oil and gas industry, but that's Doddridge County. And I'm competitive, far more competitive than what my exterior would suggest. To me, that's unacceptable that Doddridge County would be ahead of Harrison County. And so I was talking to Patsy, and we were talking to Drew about CityNet's involvement in that project. And we think there's possibly a way moving forward to do the same thing here in Harrison County. And by doing that, you put fiber, because one of the questions I had was, well, okay, we're an older state, we're an older county. You know, a lot of homes have kids who are out of school and won't ever have any kids in that home that goes to the public school system. But like Drew was telling us today, if you put fiber in the homes of every student, then you're going to go by the other homes that don't have students, and then putting fiber into those homes will be next to nothing. But if the county can find a way, and we think we might have a creative way to do it, to put money in the hands of the Board of Education, which is how they're doing it in Doddridge County, to then allow the Board of Education to hire an entity to lay the fiber and create fiber in the homes of every student in Harrison County. There's no snow days to worry about. You have, hopefully, the ability to educate every student in this county in a very effective manner, at least as effective as you can online. Let's face it, education is the quickest and easiest way out of poverty and out of the drug epidemic we have. And so to the extent I have time left in Charleston, which isn't that much time, and even as a private citizen, which will come here at the end of the year, I want to do and will commit to doing all I can to support the project vocally, financially, anything I can do to help move that type of project along in Harrison County. Because I've got a lot of pride for Harrison County. I'm selfish for Harrison County's benefit. I don't like hearing that Doddridge County is ahead of us on this. But I think it's our opportunity, and I think it starts in Harrison County. I think we really can do it as a North Central effort, North Central West Virginia effort among 7 or 8 counties, and really be the shining example for the rest of the state and rest of the, certainly East Coast, quite frankly, for that matter, because I think we're socially distanced geographically, naturally, and I think we can entice people to come back here to perform their work, even if their employers are located in some other state. So that's really all I mean, Drew Pomeroy from CityNet is the resident expert as far as I'm concerned, and he can answer any questions or just, follow up with anything he wants to add about what they're doing in Doddridge County. But we wanted to put the bug in your minds about what's possible, what they're doing in Doddridge County and what's possible. And so that's about all I have, and I appreciate you all giving us this opportunity. And by the way, we're sorry to see you leave, Dr. Manchin, but we know you're moving on to greener pastures. I mean, we want to be ahead of Gilmore County too, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank
thank you.
Before Mike speaks, I'd just like to ask Mr. Palmer, how many homes are you talking about having to put into Doddridge County?
There's about 850. There's 1,150 students, so that kind of trickles down to about 850 households.
That actually need internet service?
Ours will be 10 times.
Yeah, it'd be 10 times in ours, but, Thank you.
Thank you all for having us today. I just want to say what an honor it is to be up here at one of Dr. Manchin's last meetings and to be able to stand, during the El Presidente salute. That was really, really special. But we're going to miss you. Gilmer County's in Doug and mine's district, so we're going to get to see you some more. We'll try to make it as few as possible, but we're still going to see you more. Look, we were talking about something we've talked about for a long time. Broadband is key not only to education, it's key to economic development in West Virginia. It's something we've got to have. What's shocking is 25% of the kids in Harrison County do not have access to it. And that really surprised me. We're talking about Doddridge County. Let me just tell you, Doddridge County, it's a matter of priorities. Doddridge County gave every one of their teachers a $10,000 raise. They've got psychologists and counselors in every one of their schools. All their kids have what you just did very admirably, which was to give them all access to electronic units, iPads, and those types of things. They moved from the 54th worst standardized test scores to the 4th best in less than 10 years. And you know, we always say, throwing money at things isn't going to help. Throwing money at this problem is going to help. And we've, down in the legislature, and Tim, we're going to miss Tim terribly when he goes, but we've been working at that. But again, it's a matter of priorities. About 4 or 5 years ago, and I think Drew was part of this. I know Jim was. We guaranteed $50 million in loans for the smaller telecommunications companies to start spreading broadband. It's horribly expensive. One of the biggest things that happened, and I'm sure everybody knows this, and just to bring it to mind, Senator Manchin got us $25 million this year just for Harrison County. And during the last session, the Senate passed out a bill that's going to allow HERA, Harrison Electric, I can't remember what he does, Harrison Electric Rural Electrification Association, thank you, HREA, to string that fiber optics on their poles. So that's going to make a huge difference in Harrison County and in bringing broadband to our students and to businesses throughout the county. But the problem is, as the commissioner pointed out so aptly, that doesn't take care of Lewis. That certainly doesn't take care of Braxton or Clay or Gilmer, where we have far less than 75% access to broadband. So it's a matter of priorities. The legislature's given away over $350 million to coal companies in the past 4 or 5 years that hasn't caused one new mine to open or one new miner to be employed, but that money's gone out of our budget. Think what we could have done with that. That's $350 million every year. Think how many kids could have access to broadband. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of you all demanding that the legislature put the money where it belongs, where it'll do the best for West Virginia. And this is a start. $25 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's just going to take care of Harrison County a little bit. We've got a long way to go, but I applaud you for your focus on this. Thank you for asking us down, because it's something we try to address every legislative session, and we only get so far. And we really need to get all the way. We really need to make it a top priority. It's the future. And, it's a lot like we passed a bill that kept Tesla out of West Virginia about 7 years ago now, and I laugh in hindsight because that's the future. You can try to stop the future. You can try to keep buggy whips, being the top product in your state and in the world, but you're not going to be able to do it if the rest of the world doesn't want it. And we have to have broadband, or we're going to get left behind like we've gotten left behind too many other times. But thank you all. Superintendent Manchin, we loved you here in Harrison County. You've done a great job, and I know these folks are going to continue it on. We're going to show you we really didn't need you at any time, but we're going to miss you a lot. And thank you for your service to us. And I'm going to miss calling up here and hearing your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Michael, you answered a question that actually him and I were contemplating last meeting. So you're saying the big presentation when Joe Manchin was here at Liberty was for $25 million for Harrison County?
That's correct. That's my understanding. I haven't read the bill, but I was at the presentation, I heard the presentation.
Well,
It's
we were
$25 million
like,
for us, and then
I
they,
thought that. We were like,
and then
well, isn't that what that was for? We
Tim
saw
Stout,
that.
who's the director of HERA, and Jeff Nelson came to Senator Facemeyer and I, asked us to get that bill going so they could use that money to string that fiber optics. Ended up being a House bill because it got screwed up coming out of the Senate, but it's,
Well, who gets that $25 million? A county commission?
they're going to contract, no. They're going to contract with, the federal government's going to contract with a company that's going to string that fiber optics throughout the county, is my understanding. And that's why we had to have the bill.
Because they already have the poles, the infrastructure's in place.
So.
But HERA is not going to string the lines. They have an actual contractor that's going to string the fiber optic. Yeah.
Okay, so we as a board and as a county commission, what we have to do, in my opinion, is stand up and say, start with the Board of Education where our students are. Is that correct, what you're saying? So we can cover that 25% we're missing. So you're saying we need to,
Kristen, if you cover the Board of Education, all the kids, you're gonna get everybody. Because
You're exactly right. So that's this thing is to hit the Board of Education and our 25%, so that our 75% doesn't get cable over cable, which might happen if we don't say we have these students, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not, I don't know if I can answer that question. I think they're going to concentrate on the pockets of Harrison County that do not have service.
Okay.
Can you answer that? Go ahead, Drew.
So HREA is a rural electric company that serves the rural parts of Harrison County. So in this grant that they got, which I think was actually $19 million, that money's coming into the county for HREA to string fiber optic cable across the utility lines that they have.
Okay.
If you are an HREA subscriber right now, so like I get my power from Mon Power. I don't know who you get yours from, but I get mine from Allegheny Power. I won't be in the HREA territory.
Okay.
The HREA territory is a finite location set forth by the Public Service Commission that says this area right here is serviced by this company called HREA, and that network, that fiber was to go into that area. Where those areas are in Harrison County, that's all defined upon their service area that they have with the PSC.
Is it limited to HERA though?
Yeah, and that grant,
Nobody else is going to get any of that?
no, that grant is for HREA, right? So that is across their network. And then to your point, Ms. Messenger, about the areas that, let's start with the students first, unfortunately, it can't work like that because you have to be, A has to be connected to B to get to C to get to D. It's not a situation where you can start in the middle and build your way out. You have to connect back to what we call a service area or a POP. That's a technology you see or may have heard of called middle mile, which basically connects communities together. The cable that goes into your home is what we call last mile. West Virginia suffers from a terrible middle mile problem because it doesn't make sense for providers such as us, or Prodigy is the provider that HREA chose. It doesn't make sense for guys like us to be able to build this middle mile network because it's just way too expensive to build the network to pick up the number of customers that you might be able to pick up. So you take an area of this county like in Wallace. It's a very underserved area. It's not going to behoove anybody to build to Wallace because you can't recover enough money out of Wallace in order to recover your investment about building to Wallace. So you're stuck with the incumbent carrier who maybe or maybe not chooses to put broadband in a rural area. And at that point, if we see the complaints, we hear the same people call us that call you guys looking for service, but unfortunately, we can't give the service to those people that sit in that remote area. When I talked to Tim and Patsy on the phone yesterday and today, what I mentioned to them was, the issue that the state has had forever is the fact that there's nobody really leading the ship. We identified 55 counties, and everybody has a problem, and we say we can't get internet in Lost Creek, or we can't get internet in Tyler County. And, we do these studies and these plans, and these studies come back, and we spend all this money saying, yeah, we got a broadband problem in Tyler County. Well, it doesn't fix it by saying that we got a plan. I can tell you and save everybody a boatload of money and tell you we got problems in a lot of places in the state. That said, is that we end up with these despondent projects that stand alone by themselves that nobody's piecing together, and we're looking at this on such a micro view. If we looked at it on a more macro view, then you get some economies that can come into play that will allow us to connect places together that had no chances to connect before. I use Wallace back as that example. In order for people that live in Wallace to get to the internet, they got to be connected back to this POP. This POP is, there's a POP in Bridgeport, there's a POP in Clarksburg. Those are where the POPs are in Harrison County. In order for Wallace to get connected to the internet, no matter who they choose, it has to come back through one of those two service areas. That said, there's a project going on right now in Tyler County. It's being funded by an organization called RED, which is a regional development authority that handles that particular part of the world. So there's a fiber project that we're building right now from Bridgeport, Clarksburg, that goes to Tyler and to Wetzel counties. In Wetzel, that route that goes into Wetzel County goes straight through Shinston, out through Wallace, and connects up that way. There's your middle mile problem fixed for that particular organization. But if we're just looking at this for Tyler or Wetzel County, we don't pick up Wallace and we don't pick up Shinston. It doesn't happen. So somebody needs to be stirring the drink and hooking all these different pieces of ingredients together to end up with a product that we can all be proud of. And until that happens, we're going to end up with all these little micro projects that maybe feed or look great for a particular area, but at the end of the day, they don't help out the region or, the masses. And when I was with Adam, and to give Adam credit, the Cheeseman, who's the superintendent in Dodgers County, I'm sure you guys know him, young dude, and he's a real aggressive guy. And we sat and overlooked it, and I don't know if you've seen this football facility they have, it's amazing. And we're sitting in his office, and he said, we gotta fix this. It's terrible here in Dodgers County. And this was in December. Nobody had heard of COVID in December. We're talking to Adam, and I said, Adam, you wanna make a difference? Because he has these aspirations of being like the most fondly looked at superintendent, and the awards that come with that. I said, give internet to everybody in the county. You want to make a difference? There's no more snow days. There's no more strike days. There's no more all of this other stuff that comes with not being able to, if you go to school at Lincoln High School and you can't get an access to a teacher that might be available at Rock, it eliminates all those boundaries. Give them.
19 million. Is that what will eliminate those? No.
No, that Dodgers County's project wasn't 19 million.
No, I think she's referring to
Talking about
the
No,
HRA program.
listen, that grant is fine. That grant doesn't solve your guys' internet problem.
Okay.
That grant is fine. That grant is a piece of the puzzle. What they're doing in Tyler County is a piece of the puzzle. What they're doing in Wetzel County is a piece of the puzzle. What we're doing in Dodgers County, there's a network that's coming through today that links Columbus to Ashburn, that comes right down the rail trail, that goes through Salem, that goes through Lost Creek, that goes through Wolf Summit. All of those areas are underserved. There's a project that's happening today. There's right there, there's the HREA project. That's 5 projects that we mentioned. You got to have one person that can link all of those together to get the benefit of them all working.
Okay.
And until that happens, they are what they are.
So there's still not that one person.
Not today, and that's
Okay.
what I think these guys are asking for, is to say, if we can come up, and I'm not saying we, if the county that I
Okay.
live in can come up with the money to fund such a project, and then kind of collaborate in a smaller group to build this open access network. I do. I work for CityNet. We are a service provider. We're not saying build a CityNet network. We're building an open access network that anybody in the world can jump on. I mean, that's what this thing is for. We would be very hypocritical if we said close the internet down. We would become what they call, around here, the evil empire that shuts that all down. We are saying build a network, open the network, allow everybody to have access to the world that they should have. Because what's happening, and if you don't realize it, what's happening are the haves are getting richer and the have-nots are getting poor. And you look through this whole situation, when you guys went through this last 2 months of teaching kids remote, and I've got 3 of them that did the Schoology. I mean, you know, Frankie, it's these. My kids had access to a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of kids that didn't. And the access of the stuff that we had to do in Harrison County probably didn't meet the standard that they were doing in some other areas that everybody had access, just because you couldn't do it. Your hands are tied, right? So what happened during that last 2 months of school? The haves got richer, the have-nots got poor. And until this playing field is leveled, it's going to be much of the same.
My thing is there too many different providers? You're CityNet, and then you got Spectrum, you
Yeah.
got Frontier.
Isn't it great? Competition, doesn't it raise the bar with everything? That's what we're shooting for, is that we want to have everybody to have to do the best, to drive the price down, to make sure that the residents get the service that they need to get. That's the goal.
But there should only be one chief, shouldn't there?
Not in that's competition, right? The chief will be the people that buy the service, because the people will buy the service from the people that are doing the best job.
Doing the best job.
And this is just my ignorance, but instead of with that 19 billion with the fiber optics, I mean, do satellites, do they give enough internet?
No.
I don't have a
Satellite communications is a great downward, or is an adequate downward transmission, terrible upload. There's a lot of latency, So if you're going to do any video conferencing, any two-way communication back and forth, it's not going to work. And then you're going to get to a situation where the amount of bandwidth that's going through these devices is going to be a tremendous amount. And there's, then it becomes very expensive because you have to pay for a usage of how that satellite works. When you build fiber, and, we keep referring to this $19 million, which is great. We should be proud that that's coming to our community. That is a piece of the puzzle. At the end of the day, the goal needs to be to build fiber into every house that we can possibly can, because to this day, they have never found anything faster than the speed of light.
So what would be a footprint from a percentage standpoint of how many people have internet access and how many don't? in Harrison
That's a
County?
hard question for me to answer in Harrison County specific. I think that Todd, you probably have some data on that, because I know you asked all the kids to provide that.
Actually, Drew, we, at the beginning of this, the issue that we're facing.
Right.
Dr. Haig, we did a quick survey. We wanted to find out how many.
Yeah.
About 80%, as I recall, about 80% did have internet access.
Great.
About 20%, Senator Romano, I think you were saying about 25%. We were able to determine, it wasn't empirical, it was anecdotal. We literally just called and got that information. But we feel pretty comfortable that 75 to 80% do have.
Right.
I think the Harrison rural electrification that you were referring to, the federal government, was an underserved population has been identified. I think some of the other ones you mentioned do have. Like I said, 80% of the county does have internet access.
Yeah.
So 20%, you're absolutely right, that's too large of a number to miss out on to provide this
Yeah.
education.
And
And that's something that I'm really pleased that you're all here tonight to discuss that. That's something we have a real issue with.
At the end of the day, you wonder this question too, that the technology is, the bandwidth need. I mean, look at your home. I mean, I've got 3 kids. If you have 3 kids that are taking classes at the same time, that's 3 devices that are connected. You wonder if you say 80%, if that number really is right in terms of, and I'm sure that number is right of what they told. I'm sure the number's right what was told. But how many of those people would have an experience that if you go, say in September 1st, you have to go virtual again. And you want to go virtual by saying, we're going to have Teams meetings or Skype or whatever, Zoom, whatever technology you choose, and say, we're going to broadcast live, and there's going to be 18 other classmates, 20 other classmates in this Zoom call with you, and your teacher teaching to you, and you want this interactive experience. How many people have the broadband to be able to carry that type of connection? It would not be 80%.
So internet access doesn't equal broadband capability.
There's a federal definition that says you have to maintain 25 megabits down. If you're on any copper facility, that's impossible.
Okay.
Well, has anyone laid this map down to see how much of our 20% the grant is gonna cover? Like, is there a map for this HRER?
Actually, there was. We actually saw one at Liberty at that meeting. They did have,
Does anyone
I think,
know
Ben,
how
you
much?
were there, weren't you, Ben Queen?
I was there.
I think that's one of the.
I saw the map. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I don't know where your 20% of your students say that they don't have access. I mean, there has to be.
I'm just saying, that would be a quick, interesting
Yeah.
note to see how much that alone is gonna reduce us. Right there. Because we only have 20%, I don't wanna say only, but if you put that map, how
Yeah.
much of that 19 million is gonna take care
Yeah,
of our 20%, and then look at what.
I've never seen a map, and I've never seen a survey result, and I can tell you right now, your issues are in Salem, Shinston, Wallace, southern part of the county.
Yeah, that was the determination. I think what we're talking about, Senator Facemeyer, and if I understand it, and Delegate Miley, and Delegate Queen, is Commissioner Trucott, is the legislature, there is legislation, and Senator Facemeyer, is there legislation that I think pending, Senator Roman, or that we intend to introduce this coming legislative session that will address some of these issues?
There is a legislative committee between the joint that's studying this right now to come up with, but, I mean,
I can help you with the study. There's a problem.
well, of course there is. I mean, here's the thing where
Hey, Senator, can you stand up here, please? Just, yeah.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit with Mr. Palmer about the competitiveness, the the exact same problem that we had in the twenties in the state of West Virginia. Because the phone companies and the electric companies wanted to put their services in the cities, but not out into the rural areas. That's how we ended up with monopolies in the power company and the phone company. Because we don't have enough people to make a lot of work for a lot of different companies in this area. In my opinion, what needs to happen here is the state, through the Public Service Commission, who's going to regulate these people, needs to have all these different providers come in and give us what they think we ought to do. Because when you just get to, if there's 3 or 4 different companies, how many companies offer service in Harrison County?
But, I don't know, 5, 6.
Okay, 5 or 6 companies. The reason Wallace and Spelter and all these places don't have it, and they're not going to have it, if we expect 5 or 6 different companies to have to split that business up. This is, let's say this is the same exact problem that we had in our state back years ago with the power companies, because everyone wanted to put the power in Clarksburg, but no one wanted to run the lines out to Spelter and Wallace. So we allowed them to have a monopoly. And I think as a whole, it's worked very well for our state. Up until 6 years ago, West Virginia had the 3rd lowest power rates in the nation. So if monitored properly, but the one thing that we all kind of got a free pass on this disease. We all got a free pass because nobody expected us to be ready for this. This isn't going to be the last time something, whatever it is, happens. We have to prepare ourselves now for the future and what's coming. And I don't know of anything that would help as many people as the broadband. And another thing, let's not be short-sighted and just think we want our children to have that. We want grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles. We want people to be able to live out here on these farms and have businesses that operates on the internet and things like that. This is an investment. Do not think of this as an expense, because it's not. It's an investment. And if we invest the money in this, I mean, imagine if we hadn't have set it up to have power out in the country. And when you think back in the 20s, think what a monumental thing it would have been to have ran power lines through these mountains and everything into these little towns and so forth. We don't have the equipment we have. But anyway, it's an investment. And that's what we need to look at this as. And, for the schooling, for telemedicine, just on and on and on. There's so many different things that the broadband can do for our citizens in especially our rural areas. And I think it could open it up for a whole lot of different options. So, like I said, when we talk about this, I don't think it's an expense. I think that it's an investment in the future of our state. And I would like to see not only North Central West Virginia, but I would like to see our whole state have it. And I think the only way that that's going to be done is through Charleston. And I just think that we need to try to develop a plan and let these companies come and say, hey, this is what we will do. And we might have to have them with some help with some loans and this and that. I don't know exactly the best road for that, but I think if we ought to be honest about that, it's going to be hard to have service in Spelter if that business is divvied up amongst 4 or 5 different providers.
And you make a very good point, but with all due respect, the telecommunications network is vastly different than how the power grid is set up. And that said, is that with a fiber network that we're saying expand to middle mile, it's an open access network that would allow anybody to participate in that last mile connectivity, which is the least part of the burden of deploying the service versus the middle mile connectivity that connects the areas of the counties together.
So who will own that? Who will own that?
If the county's paying for it, school board paying for it, I mean,
So that's where I was gonna go. Where does the school board, you talked about meeting with Cheeseman. Where does the school board fit into the piece of the puzzle that we're
School
able-
board gave the money to the Dodgers County Economic Development Authority.
Okay.
The Economic Development Authority went out and secured the project to get the project going.
Okay.
The EDA is going to own the asset until they've recovered enough revenue in a revenue sharing arrangement in order to be able to recover the investment that's been made by the public dollars into the project itself.
And then where do they turn it over to after that? Do they,
Then they turn it over to, well, in this case, they turn it over to us, who is, we have agreed to the rates that would be sold on that network. And in that case, they don't turn it over to us until they're made whole. And then after they're made whole, then they're taking a percentage of the revenue as as a return on the investment that they made in the project.
And I guess from my standpoint, because I'm the one that asked that this be placed on the agenda, and I've spoken at length to Commissioner Treecost, I've spoken to Delegate Miley about this, and what it comes down to, and we've spoken about it, we know at the end of this, once the economy clears out, there's going to be pots of money. And from our standpoint, what we need to do as a school board is they're already working as legislators and commissioners toward this goal. All I offered from us was the power of our 11,000 students. So, if you're going out there as, whether you're championing a bill or whatever needs to be done, you're doing it as legislators of Harrison County. You are our representatives. I just say, us as the school board needs to say, we're with you, and not only are we with you, but here's the power of our 11,000 students and the power of our school system to be behind you and put forth, whatever is necessary to do that. Because, it's my opinion that, we need to work as quickly as possible because, as Senator Facemeyer says, we get a pass the first time, but if it keeps going on, we don't get that pass. We need to work toward it, but we need to be in a position collectively to where we're on the same page. If piles of money start appearing from the federal government, we need to be in the position where we go after that money.
So you explained Doddridge County, so let's talk about the $19 million RE. Who's gonna own that ultimately?
HREA.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't get, what he's speaking of is
different.
It's different.
Yeah.
What we were there at Liberty, and that is the federal grant to run fiber optics in the underserved part. The survey was done in the underserved part. I think with that, but that's still 2 years down the road. 2.5 years.
Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of this stuff is still 2 years down the road.
Yeah,
But because the time you get done engineering, permitting, and building,
there's
you
a
know,
lot
I
of
mean,
engineering has to take place.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Drew and well, all of our delegation, what an outstanding job you do and how much we appreciate you being here tonight. As we prepare for this next coming school year, which ironically on the agenda tonight is the reentry plan, which we're going to be discussing. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we do know now, as a result of what we have learned over these last 3 months, is that there should never be, and I think somebody mentioned it, there should never be another snow day. There should never be another day that there isn't instruction in Harrison County, regardless if they're in the classroom or if not. And I think we did, the school system did an outstanding job this year in preparation. We were well positioned because of the ice packs and so on and so forth. But we're continuing to learn and continue to provide quality education through technology. So what you've said here today, and I think Gary illustrated it very well, we really appreciate our legislative representation. You've done an outstanding job for Harrison County. Senator Facemeyer, appreciate you, Senator Romano, and certainly Commissioner Treecost and Delegate Queen and Delegate Miley. What you're doing on your side for Harrison County has been terrific. We have a lot of work to do. There is no question about it. And in fact, that is an integral part of our reentry plan, is the technology, the technological component to our reentry plan, how we're going to provide that service to 100% of the students. Like we said, we had 80%, that still leaves 20%. And that's the most crucial. Those are the students who probably need it more than any. Will fail if we do not reach them.
So I'm not sure if it's Todd or Dr. Manchin or Drew. So there's 20%. If it's going to be 2 years before they can get access, I mean, is there a fast track to helping them? Is that what this is? That's where,
So, if you will, had some conversations with the gentleman today as well. This is relatively new. There are two bills floating in Congress right now. The federal government side is very aware of this problem. None of us that work in this space, we were all aware of this problem. And again, we don't need a map to tell you where the problems are in the county. We know, and the deficiencies. And again, going back to what Mr. Palmer had to say, 80% might have access, but some of those are DSL and copper lines, and you're getting 15 meg down, which barely runs, only when we're on Netflix. So yeah, you can send an email, you can do some basic things, but is that quality broadband? No. What these bills are trying to address, and they're trying to address them fast, is methods and ways for communities to get service to students at home. They have to waive some of our regulations that we have to follow in order to do so. Some of these don't work for us. Wi-Fi hotspots is on the list. That doesn't work real well in West Virginia. The beauty of our mountains is what we all love, but they can be a hindrance as well. Because if you live up a holler in a valley and there's trees, you ain't getting much cell service. So they hinder us. And the connectivity is always an issue as well. What some of the things we're looking at is the possibility of doing some terrestrial satellite options. Spoke with Mr. Palmer about what we might be looking at there. And I think that's similar to what they're doing in Doddridge County now. So that would buy us some time before the fiber lines get run, because again, that's going to take time to get all those lines run. In the meantime, this is a fix that the federal government's looking at to put in place so that basically we'd have the ability to beam Wi-Fi to houses and stuff across the county. This building, for example, is set up perfectly for it. We have towers that we possibly could work with the county commission on, maybe leasing some space and working with them for the towers that they own, if that's possible, that we could get something up relatively quickly. But I'll have another meeting on this tomorrow. Again, this is all fresh, and I'm just learning more about it. And maybe next meeting, possibly, I can bring back some more information on that. But this is hopefully maybe a little boost that we weren't expecting.
Todd, are you telling us that the 20%, I thought it was 25, it was 20% that don't have broadband, are they included in the subpar broadband? I mean, is that the DSL?
Could be.
Copper lines?
Could be.
Or is it more than 20%?
It could be more, and we don't know if those folks answered us based off of if they owned a cell phone that had internet. If they might have answered yes because their cell phone has internet. So we don't know that answer. There's situations, and what this hopes to address as well is that there might be people. There's people I know in Bridgeport that, and you wouldn't think that, but either they don't have service. There's pockets just outside of Bridgeport on Corbin Branch that have no service. Nothing.
Maple Lake.
And Maple Lake. So there's pockets throughout the county, but also there's people that just can't afford it. Maybe they have access to it. Maybe their grandparents raising children, and they just don't have the money for it. So that's what this is looking to address, that we would actually be able to use our E-rate funding, an expansion of the E-rate program, to actually pay for and help offset, much like our child nutrition programs, to be able to offset some of those costs so that it wouldn't fall on them. That's what the hope is. So that would get us a long way.
So we're not real sure what the 20% is.
Well, it's difficult to answer, and we've been trying to answer that for many years. It's not an easy question.
And the 20% is gonna vary year to year after kids graduate and new kid households enter kindergarten.
Well, I think to Mr. Palmer's point, if we get the infrastructure set up, that allows us to be able to set the coverage throughout the county, and then we don't have to worry about the fluctuations of population and where the population is going to rise and fall versus the connectivity rate. So, I'd like to help out. I'd like to be a part of the puzzle. I think that's something that we could, as a board, collectively come to agreement with. So I think that, I thank you guys for showing up tonight and for talking with us and for the information that you've given us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
guys.
My daughter's 17th birthday, so.
Oh, you better
Oh,
go.
enjoy it. Happy birthday.
Get up, I'll hug you goodbye.
Oh,
You were good to us.
Thank
Thank you for being a friend.
you.
all right. All right, this brings us down to our delegations. We have 3 delegations this evening. And I will start out by reading, where's our delegation page?
Flip over. Flip.
No, where's the, yeah, I know, where's the statement?
It's on that one page, isn't it, from the,
No.
All right, go-
Come here, Angela, and show it.
it's on the computer.
You're leading the water.
I'm leading, oh, there it is, all right, gotcha. All right, so we have speakers before the Harrison County Board of Education are asked to express themselves in a civil manner at all time with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by the content of your comments. This is a public notice that all meetings of the school board are audio taped and most regular meetings are videotaped to be televised later on Time Warner Public Access Channel 18. While it is not the intent of the Harrison County Board of Education to ever stifle public input into our deliberations, all speakers should be aware that if your public comments made here today violate the rights of any other person, especially under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally and individually responsible. If you are unsure of the factual nature of any claim, comment, or allegation you are about to make, the Harrison County Board of Education strongly encourages you to consent first with your legal counsel. Each delegation will have 5 minutes to speak, and as a rule, typically, so that you know, we do not typically interact with delegations. Our first delegation this evening is Jessica Henry.
hi, thank you for having me. So this is my first time in this room doing anything like this, so sorry if I'm a little
Hey,
nervous.
Jessica, can you put that microphone, there you
Yes.
go.
Yes,
I
thank
can't hear
you.
you real well.
All right, thank you. So I sent an email this morning, and I wasn't sure who would have gotten it, or maybe just didn't get it today. But I just wanted to read that email, and it's kind of just, I'm very thankful that, we have the option to homeschool, to do private school, and to do public school. And it was just my story, and so this is all it is. Okay. I used to be a homeschool mom. I had all the things a pre-K to second grade school classroom could have. The posters, every supply imaginable, educational games galore, a full library, learning audiobooks, CDs, DVDs, etc. We have our own playground and trampoline. We took nature hikes weekly. We hired an art teacher and scheduled play dates with other homeschool friends just so the kids could get plenty of interaction, fun, and a healthy dose of competition between peers. The first year was rough, but we did it. The second year was good for the first few weeks, but soon homeschooling in our house took a big turn for the worst. Was I doing something wrong? I gave them everything I could as a mom, their teacher, and their personal cook, and it wasn't working. Every time I mentioned school, both my son and daughter would fall on the floor and say they can't, which led to crying and yelling on both parts. We would spend about 10 hours a day, sometimes more, trying to finish every single day. So I was at a crossroads, the only options being private or public school, and I didn't want either. I felt like a failure and wanted to prove that I and we could do this. Months went on like this, and we looked into schools in the Bridgeport area, which is where we live. I was scared to make this decision because I felt like my kids weren't ready. Sorry, something happened there. With much prayer and direction, God led us to Simpson Elementary School. Me and my kids cried in the car the very first time, but we knew it was right where God wanted us. So the first week was exhausting for all of us. The first month, something amazing happened. They were making friends, liking their teachers, and to my shock, they loved learning now. I could go on and on. Sorry. Okay. I'm writing this because I beg you to please let our schools go back to normal. Even though I did everything I could to homeschool, it wasn't working for my kids. They needed the school experience. My kids needed all the different teachers, the art teacher, the library, the music, the gym. each teacher added so much to my child. The moving to different classrooms is so important, including their outdoor play area. Their lunchroom taught my kids to try new foods. It gave them confidence when they saw their peers trying new things. They need their field trips. Believe me, I took mine everywhere, and it didn't work the same way the schools do. And not just for the kids' sake, but also for the teachers as well. I feel they need breaks from the kids. Our teachers need a break from the same kids for 6 hours. I feel like they should. We can't dismiss kids at different times either, like I saw in one of the guideline things. The Simpson parking lot is already overcrowded, and I have more than one child, so I would be there probably an hour, and I'm sure many other parents would be too. I also think the masks would scare the kids I just don't think it's practical. It'd be a distraction, and they wouldn't be comfortable or happy, and that's what I feel like school is supposed to be, a happy place that makes good soil for learning. If these guidelines are pushed through, we will be homeschooling again. And I know I'm just one family, and it doesn't really affect anybody really except us. But it will affect my children's future. They will possibly fall behind a grade. They will not get the education they need and deserve with guidelines like this. My oldest son wants to be a construction worker and an inventor when he is older. He builds all day long and loves the STEM projects he did in school. My daughter wants to be a music teacher. She fell in love with the music class and all the instruments at school. And my youngest son just wants to get to school to make friends. School gave my kids self-confidence, and when I saw them growing, it grew me as well.
Ms. Henry,
Please.
I don't want to cut you off, but you were at your time,
Oh,
5 minutes.
okay. All right, thank you so much.
You can wrap it up, you can finish up in a
Okay,
few
I
more
was
seconds.
just about done. So, please, please, please let us go back to normal. And thank you for letting me email and voice my opinion. I love my community, my state, and I love that we can show our love and support. And that's pretty much it. But thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you. You did a great job.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, our next delegation is Lacey Morris.
Hi, I'm a mom just like Jessica. I actually have 4 boys, but tonight I wanted to talk about 2 boys specifically. I wanted to tell you a tale of 2 boys. So the first boy, they're both 16. The first boy is my son Aiden. He has always been a great student. He gets straight A's. He does, he's exceptional at everything he does. He has a plan. He's planning to go to college. He's going to be a physical therapist. He's always been a leader. He's always done great in school, and during this quarantine, he's honestly had no problems. He's a self-starter. He set his own schedule. He would get up at 10 a.m. every day. He would sleep in a little bit. He would get up and he would do his schoolwork first. He works out a lot. He works out 6 days a week. So he made a makeshift gym in the garage, and he thrived during this time. Honestly, he did very well. So he had no problems during this quarantine, and he could do it if you guys chose to do the online schooling next year. He would be fine. I know he's set up for success. He's going to go on to college. He's going to do great things. But there's another 16-year-old that I have as well. When Aiden was 13, his friend Jeremiah started staying with us, and it would be just occasionally, sometimes on the weekends, just different times, and then he gradually started staying with us a lot more. We found out more about his home life. He didn't have a particularly great home life, lots of issues, a very unstable environment. He ended up living with us. So for the last 3 years, he's basically become one of my boys. Even during regular school time, he has a chance to go either way, honestly. He didn't have a great background. He has a lot of issues. He wants to work hard. He's very smart, but, it's 50-50 for him whether he's going to succeed or not, to be honest. And that was even before the quarantine. We worked with him a lot. We've gotten him therapy. We've helped him as much as we could. The first semester of school this past year, he got all A's and a B. That's a big deal for him. He's worked really hard. And then up through March, his grades were great. He was doing very well. We've talked to him a lot about college. He is a football player. He is planning to go to college, not so much for college, but because he's a very good athlete. I'm sure most of you probably know who he is. He's a very good athlete. His sophomore year, he broke a lot of records. His junior year, he's one of the best football players probably in the state. But I'm using that to get him to college and talking about him being successful. But during the quarantine, he fell apart. The structure was gone for him. You know, I tried my best to work with him, but he was depressed. He didn't see any of his friends. He didn't have that structure and the things that he needed from school to succeed. He had a meeting here with some of the teachers. We think he's passing, but we're not sure. He's on the line. And, you know, before the quarantine, he had A's and B's. So, you know, he just didn't do well in the online school environment. And I know very many other kids that don't do well. Again, Aiden did well, but Jeremiah didn't. So I'm asking for the school system to give him a chance. That he needs school, he needs that school environment. I'm doing all that I can for him to be successful. You know, he wasn't my child, but he came into my life, so I feel responsible for him. I'm doing everything I can for him to set him up for success, for him to go on to college, for him to have a good job, for him to do well in society. So I'm just asking for you guys not to do these CDC guidelines and for just start fall sports and fall school back as normal. He needs football. I know some kids don't, and some people don't agree with sports, but it's really saved his life. And if he doesn't have football in fall, he will fall apart. Like, he needs that, and he needs to go on to college, and it's very important for him. So I just encourage you guys to really think about kids like Jeremiah when you're making these guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Our last delegation is Beth Carter.
Thank you so much for having me. As a bonus, I got to hear the plans about the internet, and I just want to make a comment that I didn't get to make to our elected people, that I live in the city with very good internet, and it's still not good enough. And when we received that survey as a Harrison County family, our school issued iPad, and then the second school issued iPad, and then the third loaner mini iPad will not work on our home network. And we have I have a VPN, I have a private network, I have every single bit of internet that I can personally buy because I work from home. I've worked from home for going on 6 years now. So nothing really changed for me working from home. But my daughter struggled, and we ended up, before school was closed, we ended up begging for papers, for paper, because I knew it would be terrible trying to get the iPad to work, and it didn't. And I had to ship her off to my mom's house or my dad's house or my sister's house just so she could get onto Schoology for a little bit. So I'd like for you to consider that too, that even me, that I have enough internet that seemingly for anyone, that there was still a barrier for success on that. And that's just a bonus, and I'm really glad I got to hear everyone speak on that. So just please consider that. Now, what brings me here tonight is I just want to say that the three of us represent almost 300 people in the county that have come together on social media in a private group to express our frustrations with guidelines coming out of Charleston and with kids being out of school. We've broken apart those things. We've worked with the city council and the county commission and asked them to please open parks, please open the pavilions. We've worked really hard on that. So I'm coming here to you tonight to say thank you for taking time. Now it's your turn to listen to us. And I should be able to fit in the 5 minutes because I only have one paper. I just want to again say my name is Beth Carter. I'm a near lifelong resident of this county, and I'm a very proud graduate of South Harrison High School. I carry with me wisdom imparted from dear teachers at that school who saw fit to speak into my life with their giftings. They taught us with heart and with passion. Not a day goes by when I don't remember something that they said or something that they did that helps guide me through in this life, that helps guide me through in my professional career, and that helps me as a mom. It wasn't perfect. Nothing is perfect, but that experience at high school was near and dear to me, even with the flaws. And I want to talk about my daughter and her current experience as a Harrison County school student. She has been greatly and positively impacted by her time in Harrison County schools. She loves school. She has become friends with teachers, administrators, counselors, and staff who are imparting to her the same wisdom and care that once helped me grow. Things were going so well until March, when we were forced to stay home, when she was forced to stay home and she couldn't return to her school. I watched her bright light fade. Every day it became more clear that she wasn't going to get to see her teachers. I said, "Do you miss your friends?" "Yeah, I miss my friends, Mom." But she said, "I miss my teachers, and I miss my counselor." It's just emotional. It's just been such a rough 3 months. I'm sure everyone can identify. She lost interest in schoolwork when communications with the teachers changed. And of course, I just mentioned the internet issue, which I wasn't going to bring up, but I'm glad I was able to. My husband and I both work full-time, and we love her fiercely. We can't provide to her or replicate what school gives to her. As a parent, I'm deeply disturbed by the newly released CDC guidelines for school, and I trust that you, as fellow parents, grandparents, and administrators, are probably disturbed as well. All of the good things that we love about school stand to be removed. These guidelines, if implemented, would cripple learning and group activities as we know them. They will impede crucial development in children of all ages and abilities, from kindergarten through high school. The guidelines will further complicate the hard work of teachers and counselors and therapists, and even prohibit vital parts of their jobs. Children are safe in Harrison County schools now because they've always been safe in them. We must return to school without the new harsh rules from the CDC. We must set aside chatter from scientists who are disconnected from parenthood and school days, who are passing rules from an on-high place without a second thought to the damage they will do. Finally, I just wanted to make a note, and this is a challenge that I've said again at different places throughout the county in the last couple weeks, that you as elected leaders, I would challenge you to please lead from a place of vision and not from a place of fear. And from my days growing up and learning about the Lord, a verse that I treasure no matter where my faith stands is Proverbs 29:18, which is without vision, the people perish. So thank you for your time. And I'm sorry I went over.
Thank you very much. No,
I
you're fine.
agree with all three of you ladies. I thank you very much for coming here today, and hoping we go back to normal as possible.
So you will get to hear what our reentry plan is later on this evening if you choose to stay, or what a draft version of the reentry plan is at this point. All right, so our next item on the agenda is the superintendent's update.
Mr. President, we have a couple of things, kind of quickly. I want to recognize Dr. Haig on a curriculum. There's a couple of things that we want to get the board up to speed on where we are.
As we're looking forward to graduations for our students, wanted to report to you all that from May 1st to May 22nd, we had 78 students that would not have been graduates of Harrison County Schools that passed task tests, and they now will be able to graduate from Harrison County Schools. Dr. Manchin opened up the STEAM Center. We scheduled students in 5 at a time to test them. So there were 96 tests taken, and we had 78 tests passed. So those are students that we would have otherwise lost for these graduations. So that's some good news.
Excellent.
And we have more scheduled.
We do. And school is over now for this year. We're done. So, ladies, I know it was difficult, and what you said here tonight, I think you're going to, as you listen to us speak tonight, we're on the same page. We all want to get back as normal as we can. Mr. Lopez, on the facilities, I know you met, CFP kind of met here the other night, and we're moving quickly with the Lost Creek project and the Gore project.
Yes. CEFP met last Monday night, and we have made a few tweaks on the priority plan. Most members are very supportive, and I think the board will be pleased. We have to have our public hearings. What I would like to do, if Dr. Manchin, if it's okay, is schedule our public hearing, and we have to work with the SBA. They're not sure whether the public hearing needs to be, we're gonna have two. The second one possibly needs to be a part of the board meeting. So we were hoping, because we have to run a Class 2 ad over a 14-day period and run it in the newspaper, to do consecutively do the meetings, but also do a comment period, because we don't know how the meetings are going to look, how many people we're able to get together and that type of thing. We can still do teams, have people call in, but at least provide an opportunity for a comment period, and that will be embedded in the CEFP, those comments. So we were looking at the possibility of doing June 29th, and this is tentative based on your input. And then possibly July the 7th, we have a board meeting and maybe have a hearing prior to, and then you all could potentially vote to approve the CEFP at that time.
When does it have to be to the state?
Well, we're the first one that is ready to take it to our board, so, which, you know, we've worked with Tom Worley and McKinley. I said, let's keep moving forward. We're making progress. So, it's supposed to be July 1st.
That's what I was
Yeah, so, but I think by July the 7th, we'll be well ahead of schedule. And I think it's productive. It's been a productive process, so.
Why don't we consider, since every week things are changing, can we not consider having the first meeting at RCB where it's a larger auditorium? I know they were gonna hold some court cases there, so, you know, just for people that are so fearful, and if they know it's in a larger place, and then the second one prior to our meeting, just because I think, like the courts in Harrison County thought a bigger place would allow more people in distancing. Is that something I think we should consider would be helpful?
That location has no bearing on me. That's fine.
It doesn't have to be RCB,
Yeah.
I'm just saying in a
Well, it's a
larger
large-
You're saying
facility.
the first one's just the CEFP committee, their public hearing,
Yeah.
and then the second one has to be our public hearing.
Well, tentatively, I believe that's the way it's intended. So, location, that's fine. I didn't know how many people are gonna be allowed in a confined space and that type of
Well,
thing.
that's what I'm saying, if we go with a larger space, you know, maybe that would be helpful.
Sure.
I mean, 5 people might show up anyway, but as long as we give that option, we're being fair in the social distancing, and I mean, that would be my thought with it.
Yeah, we can do that. We can, in conjunction
It
with
doesn't have
all.
to be RCB, I just know
Well-
that Harrison County was looking
Well,
at
that's
using it
good.
for court.
That's a good place, I mean, it has so much seating. and
Well,
everything.
Rose Garden.
Plus parking.
Not the Rose Garden,
No,
downtown. Why couldn't we go there?
because I think we should
I
keep
think
it in
it's
our school
close.
system.
Thank you, Mr. Is that it?
Unless there's any other questions.
Okay. Thank you. I think, Sharon, Ms. Hinkle has a little something she wants to share with us?
I'm still pursuing our refinancing of those energy lease purchases, the last 2, and I think we're gonna see a significant savings. They're running some of the numbers now. I briefly emailed with the attorney that'll have to review it. But I think over the 14-year period, or however long we're spreading it out here, I think we'll see about $600,000 over that 14-year period of a savings. So I think it's well worth our time. There's a few prepayment penalties and some other things, and the bank has really been very nice for being such a huge bank. They waive some of the things as long as we're still refinancing with them, and so I think it's gonna be nice. And once we get it all finalized, we're hoping to close by the end of June, and then I'll be able to bring you back some concrete numbers, but right now they're kind of still preliminary. But it is reducing the rate. Those 2 lease purchases, one was at 3.65, one was at 3.75, and we're getting it down to 2.65. So it's a significant savings.
It's considerable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Story, we don't have any personnel. No. She just posting jobs, girl. This is a posting woman over here. Yeah.
Are we getting,
Getting good applicants, we're getting a lot of new applicants on these postings, so that's exciting.
20 applicants for that
We've got
principal.
speech therapists, that we haven't had before, we had an opening, we had 4 certified speech therapists, so hopefully that trend will continue.
what about retirements? Are they increasing or?
You know what, we're getting calls on what we do now to retire, we're getting some calls. I mean, we've had a bus driver come in to
Mr. President, and thank you, Nora. Mr. DeRico, I know there's a few issues and just want to get the board, has anything changed since our discussion this afternoon? Do we have the food yet or what?
No, I haven't talked to you personally, but we're not receiving the food until tomorrow afternoon. I've got a window from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So what we've made the decision to do is we will distribute meals on Thursday. We've got to push it back to Monday.
Well, have we made that clear to the community?
It's been posted on social media, a phone call went out, all the avenues. Haley's even got it on the Expo already, so.
I appreciate the way you handled that. So, Mr. President, that's all I have for the superintendent's update.
All right, thank you. I think at this time, we pull out our calendars. Angela, can you let us, our next meeting that we have is the 26th? Is that correct? The 16th. And that's our special meeting or regular meeting?
No, that's a regular.
Okay, so that's our regular
No.
meeting.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yes, sir,
16th.
it is.
Okay,
We
so
covered that.
we have the special meeting scheduled for
The 26th is what I had it on our calendar for.
the 26th.
Tentatively.
Tentatively, okay.
Yes.
So I think at this point in time, due to the circumstances that we are addressing, facing, I think we have to pull our June 26th meeting into next week. And I would like to suggest we look at Wednesday or Thursday at 4 o'clock. And the only item on the agenda should be personnel.
Can we do any earlier?
Earlier than 4?
Yeah, I mean, I've got other things.
Would another day be better? Would Monday be better?
Wednesday at 4 would be fine,
And that's
but
the
not,
10th.
but not Thursday.
That would be June 10th.
I'm good with that.
Wednesday, June 10th. Doug?
June 10th.
I'm retired, anytime's good.
You're
Okay.
retired?
All right, so
Shock you there, Angela.
let's take our note and put June 10th as our special meeting, which would, at 4 o'clock, which would make June 16th our last meeting
Yes, sir.
of the year.
The only thing is that 26th meeting is the finance meeting that we do a lot of budget things.
Can you bring in that to the 16th?
Well, it won't be ready by then. But if we don't want to have another meeting, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll just not do it, I guess. It just cleans up it cleans up.
We'll just do it our own way, don't worry about it.
Do you need any approvals? Do you need any
It just,
approvals
the
from us?
budget supplements and transfers, it just cleans up our financial statements.
It's a couple million, don't worry about it.
A statutory meeting has to
On
take
On
place.
July,
July
well,
Yeah, but I
it's
have to
supposed
have
to be
it
July
before
1st, but it's the first
Yeah.
But
Monday.
that's okay, I'll work, I can work through it, I'm not,
Sure?
yes.
So we have a meeting on June 10th
June 10th for the special meeting,
At
at 4 p.m.
4 o'clock, and then June 16th, the week after that,
That'll be a regular.
With 6 o'clock.
And it would just take 2
at
minutes.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, we can still do her new meeting, even
On the
if we're
26th.
out of meetings. We're just coming.
We're out of meetings at
That's what
that
I'm
point.
saying, but the
Yes.
only difference is there's no.
I mean,
you
even
could
if
do
we do
more.
it over.
We could do as many as we want.
Yeah, so,
Right.
let's go ahead and do it this, but then we can come in at noon just to approve the payment of the bills on that 29th or whatever.
That'd be the 26th.
26th, so it's only gonna take, it's just a vote to approve the vendor payments and nothing
Budget
else.
supplements and transfers.
That's all you can have on there.
Yeah.
So that's fine. If there's no objection to anybody
That at noon.
doing a 51st meeting on the 26th, we'll leave that meeting scheduled and then schedule our special meeting for next week.
Yeah.
And
We
then you'll
expect
have
you
a
to-
regular meeting
Oh,
on
be here.
June
I'll be here.
16th at 6 o'clock.
Yes. So we have one for the next 3 weeks.
Yes,
So-
June 10th.
June 10th at 4, June
6th.
16th at 6,
Yeah.
and June 26th at noon. Okay? All right, that brings us down to our next item on the agenda, consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent items as presented?
So moved.
A motion has been made by Mr. Hoag to approve the consent items. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hamrick has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion on consent items? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, we have the reentry plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
Mr. President, if I may, I'm going to recognize Dr. Haig, who has worked over these last several weeks in my direction. I want to make this clear to everybody that this is just a starting point for our discussion. I said earlier, and I want to continue to emphasize my desire and our desire to get back to normal as quickly as we can and get back to school. That's what I want. But I think it's incumbent upon us to put together a plan if that is not going to happen. Who knows what the future holds? So what this is tonight, we're not even going down on a 30-day comment. Like I said, I've asked Dr. Haig to work on this with a committee of community members, employees, administrators, parents, and she's done quite a bit of research. So I want to really emphasize this tonight, that this is just for discussion period or purposes, to start that discussion should it be necessary come August, the end of August, as we start school. I hope that it doesn't, but I think the parents and the communities in Harrison County would hope that we would have a plan in place should it be necessary. So that's how this discussion will be focused tonight. So with that said, Mr. President, I'm going to recognize Dr. Haig. Donna, if you'll get out there, over there, please, and open up the discussion for the board and allow their input. And they all have their documents, I think.
Yes.
I didn't get any documents.
I gave them to you, they're laying there.
Okay, all right.
I was thankful to have the opportunity to hear you all speak tonight. I think what you are saying mirrors what a lot of our families are saying. As a mother with a third grader and a first grader, a working mom at that, I am very realistic in realizing that my child needs their first grade teacher to teach them reading. I am not the best person to do that. So I certainly understand what you have gone through. In Harrison County Schools, as a district, we recognize that the best place for children to learn is in the ideal setting, a classroom face-to-face with their child or with their teacher to support all of their needs. I think that everyone on the committee that worked on this recognizes that as well. Educators, parents, school-level administrators, and district administrators. So I just wanted to, I did give you a draft of a document that has several components in it, and I certainly don't want to go over that page by page, but I did want to call to your attention some really important details from it. The first page starts out a timeline, and that really outlines what Dr. Manchin's response was to this pandemic as soon as the world changed as we knew it on March 13th. And that highlights everything from food distribution, the number of meals that have gone out to communities, to supports that we have offered students for mental health, and the scheduling of proms, the postponing of proms, the scheduling of graduation. So all of that is there in that timeline, and I call your attention to that because I definitely think that that represents some forethought of Dr. Manchin, and adding some structure and stability to a very unstable time for many people. I did want to call your attention to page 3 as well. That is your stakeholder group. Dr. Manchin very early said we will have stakeholder groups. We will start meeting. We met virtually. We are on our 3rd meeting with that stakeholder group. We have a high school group, a middle school group, and an elementary school group. You'll see it's representative of teachers, school-level administrators, union representatives, as well as district administrators and parent involvement. This is by no means the entire scope of these stakeholder groups because, as Dr. Manchin mentioned, the plan is to turn this out to the public and involve more and more stakeholders in this, but we did start with a smaller group to brainstorm. I will say that Chad Bundy from the health department came in and reviewed our plan. Jody Sperry, the head of our school nurses, has been working very busily as our liaison between the Harrison County Health Department and the school system in this reentry plan. And we, of course, have worked very well during this collaboration because we believe that the school system knows the school system best. And so we've appreciated that collaboration from medical professionals such as Mr. Bundy and Jody Sperry, of course. So I call your attention to page 4, beginning on page 4. And what I did is I made it separate, a separate document for you, because my eyes are going the older I get. And so we attempted to make this a little easier for you to read as well. But what this stakeholder committee started looking at, and based upon some guidelines provided by the CDC, as well as the World Health Organization, and looking at other plans from other states, such as Kentucky, Ohio, Georgia, we've looked at what those states have released as guidance to districts, and did a good bit of research, as well as what was released from the West Virginia Department of Education. And we started a discussion of perhaps a coding system that we could utilize for Harrison County schools. Under this coding system, I think it's important to note that you could have a school or a feeder area that is impacted by multiple COVID-19 cases, and that single school or single feeder area could go into a code orange, for example. So if you look at this, code green is all things normal. School starts as school was prior to March 13th. If you look at code blue, and these definitions were provided by Mr. Bundy of the Health Department as he reviewed our plan, based upon a formula that they have, that they use in the medical world. But our hope is that in August, Harrison County Schools would start under a code blue. And code blue would mean that we have one case of COVID or no cases of COVID in our schools that's impacting a school system directly. And we would start in with recommendation for face mask, heightened cleaning. Cleaning would occur every 2 hours. And our buses would be cleaned after every run. We would work to socially distance students in our classrooms. And in our classrooms, such as special education classrooms or school buses, where social distancing could not occur 6 feet apart, we would recommend that students wear face masks. Every student from age 2 and higher is what the CDC guideline is. We would recommend that, but we would start back under code blue, if the board would consider this. We would make those social distancing recommendations. We would educate students on cleaning of hands. We would provide hand sanitizers, all the tools that those students would need to do the CDC recommendations the best that we could in the facilities that we have. I know many of you, all of you, have been in classrooms within our district, and it would be very difficult to separate students in a class of 26, 32 kids, 6 feet apart. And that's where we would rely upon face masks and work to relocate those students to other areas of the building, but to start and provide instruction as normal. You'll see that this chart goes down through cleaning measures. Under a code blue, we would do heightened cleaning every 2 hours. We'd recommend buses be disinfected after each use. There's a section on absences of how we would deal with student absences and employee absences. There is a section on communications to parents. There is a section on child nutrition. CDC guidelines have indicated that students should not be fed in lunchrooms, as we all are accustomed to, unless those students can be separated 6 feet apart or do smaller cohorts. So for example, working under a code blue, an administrator may add an additional lunch period. So instead of having 300 students in the cafeteria where they can't sit 600 feet apart, the administrator would add another lunch period, as an example, lessen the number of students in that space, and provide more opportunity for them to be 6 feet apart under a code blue. There may be some of our schools that could not do that, and as Mr. DeRico has been working through this situation as well, perhaps those students could go to the cafeteria, pick up their lunch, take it back to a classroom and eat under a code blue. Or there is an opportunity to do box lunches, and those are a variety of things. So under code blue, we would have all of our students in our schools to start out. The final page deals with travel. Under a code blue, we would have no out-of-school travel. We would encourage virtual field trips. And we have a number of students that travel from school to school. The ROTC program at RCB, for example, receives students from Bridgeport High School. And so if we had several cases at Bridgeport, then we would monitor those students and perhaps they would not travel to RCB. We have students that attend Pierpont, they attend college classes, and so in working with the Harrison-Clarksburg Health Department, We would trace where those cases are at, and we would heighten our awareness of students traveling to those locations and restrict those. Buses, under a code blue, we would highly recommend that students wear face coverings, and we would work to provide physical distancing when that is available and as feasible. That does comply with the CDC guidelines that they have released for buses. So under code blue, if we have fewer cases, that's what we would open up under. Meetings and use of facilities, we would postpone or cancel those if we could not control social distancing. And extracurricular activities, the SSAC on Friday, they released some guidance to schools to start summer conditioning. And so we would keep abreast of that and look at where we're at with code blue. Code orange gets a little more heightened. And so if you'll go back to page 1 and look at the definition that Mr. Bundy and Jody Sperry and I looked at after Memorial Day, and the committee reviewed as well. So a code orange would be, and it's very important to distinguish this, a code orange is minimum or moderate community spread, as defined as 5 to 10 cases in Harrison County for the past 7 days that may directly impact that school or that feeder area. And Mr. Bundy was clear to point out, for example, you may have a nursing home that has 10 cases of COVID-19. That nursing home may not directly impact any of our schools, and so we would stay under code blue. We would not move into code orange. If, however, in our collaboration with the Harrison-Clarksburg Health Department, if they indicated to us through their tracing that 7 of those cases are directly related to South Harrison feeder, then the superintendent could make the designation of schools or a school in the South Harrison feeder as orange, while the rest of the district would stay as blue. And so under an orange criteria in our reentry plan, the superintendent may consider to close that South Harrison school or schools for 14 to 28 days to do heightened cleaning and consider bringing in smaller groups of students. And that is where, if you will look under preventative measures, this is one of the things that's been tossed around about the stakeholder committee the most. So under code blue, you have all students can come to school under preventative measures as much as we possibly can do. Under code orange, you are working at limiting the number of students. And so then your administrators, prior to the opening of school, would work to identify a cohort A of students and a cohort B. So essentially, if I have a school with an enrollment of 400, as an administrator, I would say, these students are cohort A, and they would report on Wednesday and Friday. And then I would identify a separate group of 200 students and say they're cohort B, and they would report on Tuesday, Thursday. So you'd have a Tuesday, Thursday cohort and a Wednesday, Friday cohort. The 5th day would be utilized for our staff to do heightened cleaning. It would be utilized for our teachers to be able to prepare for those students who are in front of them face-to-face on some days and virtually some days, and to work on some cross-curricular designs. So staff would report all 5 days, but you would just have students for 4 of those. This is a model that is based off of something presented by Maryland, as well as Kentucky and Georgia. You also could look at, and the committee's been talking about this, for the secondary schools, some states, I believe it's Ohio, is proposing that secondary students would come in on an A-B schedule. Same thing, you'd take those 200 students, they would report on Tuesday through Friday, while the other cohort stays home. And then the following week, you get the next cohort. So you would have continuous instruction for a group of students. So those are the 2 models that the stakeholder group is looking at if we moved into code orange. Going on to the second page, under a code orange, we would restrict movement in the school. So that is something that Mr. Jericho would work to have lunches delivered or transported to the classrooms to eat. We would limit bus duties, bus rooms as much as we could. Perhaps students would exit the bus and go straight to a classroom instead of being in a large space with a large number of students. Under a code orange, we would heighten cleaning. Instead of doing it every 2 hours, we would do it every 1 hour. And of course, buses after each bus run. Under Code Orange, with attendance, we would accommodate those children and personnel who have documented high risk with doing a little more loosening of our attendance policies for students and making those accommodations with physical documentation. Communications, we would push out stronger mental health supports, more status updates to parents, and we would just heighten that communication. Child nutrition, I think we talked about that. Travel, no student or employee travel in county, out of county, or out of state under Code Orange, because the goal is to minimize that movement. Buses, the CDC recommends when you would go into more cases that you would look at doing protocols that would be provided by the Department of Transportation. Some things looking at one student to a bus, which, as we all know, would be very difficult. To a bus seat, thank you. One student to a bus seat, which would be very difficult to accommodate. But that would be heightening that preventative measures and decreasing the number of students. The final code is Code Red, and that is what Harrison County Schools is under currently. We would enter into a Code Red at any time during the school year, or a school would enter into Code Red if, by the Harrison County Health Department's definition, 11 or more cases in Harrison County over the last 7 days that directly impact that school. So if we had a surge in cases, for example, at Robert C. Byrd High School, then Robert C. Byrd High School could enter into Code Red, which would mean that the superintendent could implement protocols for delivery of instruction online, which is where we're at now. So principals would communicate that to families prior to the school year starting, along with this coding system that says, if our school needs to move into Code Red, these are the protocols that we would follow. Going on to page 2, cleaning measures, those would be scheduled on rotations, similar to what Mr. Lopez did during this situation, and there was heightened cleaning whole areas. Staff and students do not report to schools under a Code Red, similar to as what we've got now. Accommodate personnel absences who are at high risk for attendance waivers. Communications will be heightened. Child nutrition, Mr. Dorico would work to do the food distribution sites, as he is doing right now. And travel, of course, no student or employee travel. Operation of buses would cease under a Code Red. So essentially, we finish the school year under a Code Red, and then prohibit the use of school facilities by outside groups. So this is what we have been discussing the last couple of weeks, but it is something to spring from in our discussion. The last thing, and I'll be quiet, I know I've taken too much of your time, but if you will take a look at page 9, if a school system, or if a school or schools went under Code Red, you will notice this plan actually, I know many of you received calls. I know administrators received calls, teachers received calls about the length of work that was assigned to homes and how long it was taking to do things. And so on page 9, this plan actually would provide for that. If under a Code Red, a pre-K teacher, the maximum amount of instruction that could be assigned is 60 minutes per day. Grades 6 through 8, it's 25 minutes per day per class, or a maximum of 150 minutes. And so that guidance has never been put in writing to our teachers before, but that is something that we could certainly look at in this document that would help families out as well as teachers out. And I know that many of our stakeholders were talking about even adding to this document availability of teachers during that time. So that is definitely something that we could add to this document. The other thing that you'll see, page 10, we've highlighted some areas that the Stakeholder Committee has asked questions about, and that we are certainly looking into for further information. And page 13, I know Mr. Lopez was working with the middle school and high school principals yesterday as well as today in development of this plan, because the SSAC released some guidance about summer conditioning, and I don't know if you want to take it over from this part.
If it's okay, I think it's important for the board to know that the West Virginia Secondary Schools Athletic Commission had worked with the state health officials and also the governor's office to get some guidance on being able to allow kids to report to outside activity with the school. So it would be very prescriptive, and that is to begin next week phase one is June the 8th through the 19th. There are no touch points. It's a 1-hour limit. Kids will have to be in pods, and so they have to stay in those pods each day. There was an overwhelming, I think, response by the school administration to allow this. And I did try to emphasize it's very important to be responsible and follow these guidelines, because I think that it affords the opportunity as you go through phase one to see, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to reinitiate a meeting routine to see if phase one was successful, to look at phase two, which is it increases from, it's still pods. One coach can work per pod in phase one for those kids. They kind of initiate a cohort. Then it will go into two pods. Maybe one coach could work with 20 kids separated in a space. You can occupy up to 25 kids in a space. So it's very prescriptive. They did a very good job. So I think that it gives an opportunity for confidence to build through that period to see if the responsibility of, it's really our student athletes are going to have to be educated well as too, to make sure that they are experiencing this and taking it serious. So we talked to them about that, and then we said, well, we'll take a look at then week 3 and 4, which is June 22nd through July 3rd. Now, this is only for athletics right now, so the co-curricular piece of it would be coming with band camps and things like that. If everything would progress and they can find a way to do the social distancing, it gives some positive light on an opportunity for kids to re-engage in activities in the fall and get back to some normalcy. But, it's just like a lot of the guidance that we're getting, it will continue to grow and expand and change, very fluid, like Dr. Hagan said. So hopefully this at least gets kids up off the couch, gives them an opportunity safely, because there's no touch points. You're outside, you can't go inside.
They'd have a physical.
They have to have a physical before they can report, so we're gonna make sure they're healthy. And I'm sure they're gonna sweat a little bit, which is a good thing for kids, to get some normalcy. So their schools should be reaching out to the student athletes and making them aware of that. But I think it was important that you all knew that there potentially would be probably a small group of kids start to report to the outdoor facilities next week.
And each school has to have a sanitation plan. That is a requirement of that. And so Ms. Sperry got this information from the health department.
Yeah, I worked on the sanitary.
So each administrator under the SSAC guidelines has to have a sanitation plan. So you should have a copy of this in your packet as well, so.
And Jody also, Ms. Berry, I apologize for not mentioning that, they work very hard to get a lot of doctor's offices and providers to schedule some visits and get some free physicals. Some of them it's going to cost a little bit, but I think that the health professionals are going to help us out and try to get a quick turnaround for kids to report to camp. And then also working with the health department to get the sanitation plan. It's kind of a big piece too, so thank you.
Dr. Hay, you mentioned in one of the places, I believe Orange or something, about travel. There'll be no travel here, there.
Yeah, under Code Blue as well as Orange.
Okay, but what about students that go from their home high school to the Career Center?
That would be monitored but allowed under Code Blue. Under Code Orange, we would restrict that if we saw that we had identified cases that would put those students in harm's way. So Code Blue would allow that travel between schools as well as the United Technical Center and all of those. Code Orange, it would get a little tightened based upon the number of cases that are directly impacting those schools.
But they still would be able to go.
You would, but we would more closely monitor it. Yeah, and could restrict it.
I've got a couple things.
Yeah.
One is, our goal is to be able to send all kids back to school, and in order to do that, you need to make sure that the ones that are sick don't come to school.
Yes, sir.
Or we're back in the same situation. I think that requires some assistance from the state, and maybe with Mr. Queen here, it could require some legislative help, because we all know that we've dealt with it before, is with the attendance, it's very regimented, and when those 5-day letters and those 10-day letters go out automatically by the state. So if you've got someone who is sick and doesn't come in, and they get that 5-day letter that they're gonna be prosecuted for truancy, that's gonna be an issue. So that needs to be addressed to where there's a moratorium on that, or else it's gonna hurt our reentry plan, because sick kids are gonna come to school
Right.
because they don't wanna get that letter. They don't wanna be threatened with that. We don't send the letter out, the state does. We've dealt with that before.
Yeah.
So that needs to be addressed, or this plan's gonna fall apart. My other thing, I have a little bit of issue, and I know it's hard to put together any stakeholder meeting, and you've got, 3 different stakeholder meetings, but I have a little bit of an issue because I'm seeing folks from the central office, and I'm even seeing some union but I'm not seeing rank and file cooks, bus drivers, or custodians on there.
Sure.
Custodians clean the place. They need to be, you need someone who does that. You need someone who's a cook, and you need certainly a bus driver. And I don't think any reentry plan that we do is going to work unless we address the busing situation first. If we can't get them there and figure out a way to get them there, then the rest of it's a moot point. But I just rather, if we're going forward with this stakeholder meeting, if there's future ones, we need someone that's rank and file, an actual cook, a bus driver, and a custodian
Sure.
on each one of those.
Yeah, yeah, we just had union representative, you're right.
Yeah. But like Sherry Talkington, she represents the service employees,
Sure.
but she's not a bus driver, she's not a cook, and she's not a janitor.
Sure.
Sweden is the role model,
Yeah.
right, for the CDC, saying Sweden, everything's fine. They didn't
Yeah.
shut down, they didn't close, they're not having social distancing, they're not doing all that, they're not having, I understand we gotta have a plan in place, but Sweden is not going through all this crazy stuff, and they're not having the issues.
Denmark
Well, I
brought their
know we have to
elementary
have
back.
a plan, in, just so we have a plan. My fear with this whole thing is that, kids love, especially during test days, to go, I'm sick, I can't come in because there's a test. So now I think this whole COVID thing, I think kids are gonna take advantage of that, because if they know only a group of them can shut down a school, they're gonna call, oh, I got this. And with our testing, could not, maybe they can't get there, their parents. I just think, I know we gotta have a plan in place, but I think, we need to go back to normal and just really increase with hand washing,
Sure.
not go.
Why are we starting blue and not
Hide.
green?
Oh, and we don't have to. That's what Dr. Manchin was talking about today. Yeah, it's just a discussion. We don't have to do any of these codes. We
I
could
like
just
the
do
codes.
blue
I
and
just
red.
don't know why we have to start blue when it's so many months away.
The
But we
health
don't have a
department.
vaccine for the flu.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things we don't have vaccines for.
Yeah, I mean, the flu, sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it right. I mean, this is,
I mean, that was the health department's recommendation.
I
We
understand.
don't have the vaccine, and, and we will continue to have cases that.
I think it's more important to have a testing than a vaccine at this point
Oh.
because of like what he's saying, just as much as what Michael is saying, I'm gonna reverse it. There are a lot of kids like Jeremiah that even if they're sick, they wanna go to school. As much
And
as kids
thrive.
that don't wanna go,
Yeah.
there's, I think, more that will not follow these to go to school. So to me, testing is,
We'll be doing temp checks every morning.
but I mean like actual testing, when you talked about like the vaccine, I would think that a quick test to see if someone has it before you close down the school because someone has a cough for 14
Yeah, it
days.
has to be documented through the Harrison County Health Department.
Closing down just to close
Yeah.
down. It'll be, and you've got to think that, I've been working with the health department, up until last week, I've been going there 2-3 days a week, entering their data and, kind of data crunching for them. And I've been able to see a lot of their negatives and their positives, and as of last week, we haven't had a single case under the age of 20.
Have we had any cases in our schools? I mean, like any of our
We
students?
have not had a single case in Harrison County as of last week that would have affected a student. So, now, would it have, it would have affected, it would have affected parents and would have affected
personnel.
personnel.
I'm like him with
So
it, you
it's
know,
hard
I
to
know you
say.
have to have a plan, but
Yes, we
my
have to have a
plan would simply be, let's hope we can start normal, and if parents or students, cause I know some of the kids, like I said last time, they're getting their pink mask on and all that stuff. If a kid wants to wear it, that's fine. I mean, it's sort of ironic to look up here and you see 1, 2, 3 mask, and then from 1, 2, 3 not. So this tells you what our society is, and neither one of us are wrong. And I just think that starting off normal.
Well, I'm
And
high
normal.
risk.
Right. And
I'm very high risk.
I wear mine because I
that's-
sit next to Doug and.
You don't have to
Yeah.
defend yourself, that's not what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
I'm
I'm
just
saying that's
saying,
personal opinion.
you know.
Yeah, it's not,
I mean, heck, wear them all you
But,
want.
but I will say, like you said, no one's right or wrong.
That's
You know,
right.
you mentioned Sweden.
Right.
Today, their death rate's 10 times higher than Norway. They have an explosion of deaths. So things can change. I mean,
Well,
so
yeah.
no one should say, well, they said one thing and then they said another. Everyone's learning, even the scientists
right,
are
right,
learning
this,
it as
all
we
this
go.
stuff, like in the beginning, because we didn't know about it, so
Yeah.
everyone was
And our
fearful.
goal is to open
We're
up
learning
with
more and more
everyone.
about it, and that's where I'm
Actually,
like,
I haven't heard of it at all since the riot, so might not have to
if
worry
you,
about it.
I mean, but I don't think we're never gonna be in trouble for at least taking precautions and
I
have
agree-
this
I
in
agree.
place. But if, you know, we can say it all we want and say, people say, let's go back, but, you know, if we had an outbreak and a bunch of students, we'd be on the chopping block. So
No, it's not even the fact that you're on the chopping blocks.
Right.
There's just the responsibility that we have
It's weighty.
as a board to do what we can to protect children and staff. And you're absolutely right. And
But
you don't
you
know
can't-
who's high risk and who isn't high
Do you
risk.
not
I
think
understand, but we
mental
can't wrap-
health isn't a high risk?
I
mean,
did not say
last
that.
year-
That didn't, and
I mean, that's
didn't
something
come
that
out of my
has to be
mouth.
weighed in.
I
What
said
I'm
that we have
saying
to
is-
effectively make sure that we protect people in our schools. Because you look at the flu, look last year in Bridgeport High School and Robert C. Byrd High School, you had situations, the flu knocked out half the senior class.
right, but the
All right.
flu vaccine, right, sometimes they miss it, and sometimes you don't. So it's not 100% with the vaccine.
Well, I mean,
whether with the
I'm
flu
not
or
an
not the flu.
epidemiologist
So-
or a I
I
don't know anything
understand.
about vaccines, but what I'm saying is that there was a situation in our county last year where a virus knocked out half of our senior class
Right.
I didn't even know about it.
in Bridgeport. Half the senior class was out because of because of the virus. So whether you have, and the only reason I know that is because my daughter's a senior in Bridgeport. And she was out. She was sick. So, you know, we can sit here all we want and say, this virus, that virus, whatever, but the fact of the matter is, it's not gonna hurt to clean, it's not gonna hurt to be on heightened alert, it's not gonna hurt to wear a mask, because some of these kids are gonna be carriers and can take it home to their children. The one thing we will get crucified for is if we go back, open up at full capacity, let everything go in without any masks, without any precautions, we will get crucified if a kindergartner or a first grader who wipes their nose and spreads the disease to the rest of their class starts an outbreak. You won't be able to control it at that point in time.
But I don't think you can wrap kids in bubble wrap and say, well,
I-
nothing ever is gonna happen to you. And you don't know where it
Because
starts.
that's not what I said.
I understand, but you don't know if it's at kindergarten or if it's, I mean, kids go to the bathroom, they don't wash properly, you know what I mean? To say, this is, Johnny started it, I don't think we can ever get it where we are 100%, like, we're gonna stop everything from happening in school.
Oh, I agree with you.
So, with the mask, I mean, I think, if you want to feel like you want to wear a mask, great. But the mask, for the people who are sick, yes. But the general public, what's his name?
I'm not sick, but I wear mine because my friend Doug here.
I understand.
Is high risk.
I'm not sick and I wear mine because I have a diabetic in my family.
I understand, but if you don't have it, why are you wearing the mask?
Because my diabetic is high risk and could catch it and die.
So the high-risk person should wear the mask.
No, the high-risk person should wear the mask and I should wear the mask.
But it's the
so that
people
I
who-
don't bring it home to the high-risk person.
Maybe it's if he doesn't take it home to the high-risk person.
But the high-risk person would be the one who would be. I know.
I may be asymptomatic. I may get it
But
and
the
not show any
asymptomatic stuff was-
symptoms and not show any type of
Right, but the
fever or
asymptomatic
anything.
stuff was proven wrong. Like,
No,
Yes.
it wasn't.
See, right now, we're debating science, and that's not really our place.
That's not our place to debate science.
We're debating science, we're debating politics and all that. We have to have a plan, we have to be prepared whether we use it or not, and
I understand having a plan, but I'm just, because we're still learning all about this thing.
Okay,
I'm just trying to,
As it stands right now, without the fact that there's no vaccine, if I'm correct in saying that we haven't had a case in Harrison County in over 14 days?
I don't know, I haven't been on that.
we had one last weekend.
If there was one last week, so we would be entering in a blue code blue anyway, because we had one case in 14 days.
Sure.
So I think that, we have to start somewhere. And I think that, the work that's been put into this plan has been extensive and exhaustive, and I think that they are to be commended for the work that they've done.
No one said anything to
But
the
this is not the
contrary
final plan.
about
This
it.
is
Oh, no,
just-
no, no,
No,
no.
this
That's what
is
I'm
a
saying.
draft.
So
This
eventually,
is a
we're
draft
going to go
of a
to a
plan.
final plan, and when the time comes, school starts the latter part of August.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't,
Nobody's saying we're not gonna open the schools and go back to the way it was last year. We don't know yet. We can't predict the future.
Mr. President, if I may, and there's a couple salient points, and first of all, let me say, Donna, the work that you've done has been terrific in your research. She spent hours, Jimmy, and all of us. But there's a couple salient points. This document is aspirational. It may end up not being what we do. I want to make that clear. As we sit here, we talk about social distancing, and reality sets in. What's the chances of a kindergarten kid socially distancing or leaving a mask on when it's 80 degrees outside? We all realize, Donna Haig, all of us here, we're all probably saying the same thing. What we understand, but what I think we have to do as responsible adults, one, and elected officials, is to have a plan in place that ultimately will be this board's approval. This is a starting point, and what this has done is allowed for this discussion. I've listened here, and I think it's good. I really, really do. I think it's healthy and open up the discussion. This pretty much reflects society today. All you have to do is watch the news. There are those who have certain feelings and who have different feelings. But and Mr. President, and if we may, this got the discussion started. I would like to exit this with the understanding is that we don't know what's going to happen in 6 weeks. We didn't know 6 weeks ago what was going to happen today.
That's right.
So we would be remiss, though, as a responsible Board of Education, and I think, Mr. President, you said it very clearly, it would be irresponsible of us for not to put a plan together should the eventuality happen that a child or one of our teachers or a parent or somebody got sick and we didn't have a plan in place of how we were going to address that. So you're to be commended for the job that you have done. I think this board is appreciative, and I didn't misconstrue anybody saying that they didn't appreciate it. Just have difference of opinions how we go about this. So this is the start, Mr. President, members of the board. Hopefully what will happen over these next couple of weeks, we will continue to update this. We'll continue to gather information. At the appropriate time, we'd like to go out on a 30-day comment, allow the public to interact with it. I think tonight with the media here, that there will be probably some discussion tomorrow in the newspaper that will allow for further discussion in the public venue. And then hopefully before long here, we'll have a document that we will have in place, and heaven forbid that there's a second outbreak or whatever may happen, and we didn't have a plan. I think that would be terrible. I think that this board and their superintendent should be held accountable for not having one. And I think by virtue of putting this together, at least it's a start, and ultimately have one here before too long and address this critical issue we could not have foreseen a few weeks ago. So,
If I may add one more detail, I
Sure.
did want to call your attention to. On page 10, the Harrison County Health Department is willing, if the board would like, to test all of our employees through a drive-through 4-day window. I think Mr. Bundy said that he could make that possible for us in August. Because of the incubation period of the virus, we would have to do that closer to August 18th than now. But that is something I wanted to call your attention to that came about because of the collaboration.
Would it show if you had the COVID antibodies, or if you had it? In fact,
It depends on the availability at that moment, because right now, that's not, they don't have the ability to do that, right? Like, if we wanted to do that today, depending on the testing that they have availability, right now, we're talking about a swab test that would say whether the employee was positive or negative. Now, what would be available then, that's, a world away, We could possibly have that, be able to say, yes, you've had it, and, we can't really say people are immune right now, because we don't really know that answer. Whether you can get it a second time, we could say you've had it or you haven't had it. And we might be able to say, we will be able to say, yes, you have it currently, or you don't have it currently. So that would give our parents a sense of security of, okay, everyone going into school within that certain window, which is why we would have to do it, 4 or 5 days before school started, is negative, at least, right that minute. So it would be a short window, a drive-through testing, staff wouldn't even have to get out of their car. It would be a quick, and that would be done through the Bucksburg Health Department.
I want to
Look,
just.
I'd like to say thank you, and to everybody and committee and everything for working on it. And the old adage is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think that that's something that needs to be kept in the forefront, that we want to make sure, whatever we come up with in the end, is we know that we planned, and we sure don't want to fail.
I just want to say that I never wanted to infer that we shouldn't have a plan. That was not my thing. I misunderstood starting on blue.
Yeah.
With so much uncertainty and why we wouldn't start on green.
Sure.
That was my question.
Yeah, I think that was the advice from the health department, is that we start on blue because we don't have a vaccine and are not expected to have one until
Well, I
February.
guess
And that's
I
if-
look at
if-
that
that's
as
if it
it's
started
too far
today.
away.
Correct, that is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
if it
that's-
started
that's-
today.
That's if it
Yeah.
started
That
today.
is correct.
That's if it started
If it
today.
started today,
Okay,
we
and
would
I
be
just
2 months from now.
misunderstood that, and quite honestly, I don't want
2 months
other
from now,
people to
we could be red.
misunderstand
Right.
2 months from now, we could be
with
dead.
the paper there that, this is a plan, we're starting on blue.
Right.
I just wanted that clarified, why we
Absolutely.
would start on
It's like
blue
they say,
and
playoffs
not
start
normal.
today.
Absolutely.
It could be that we'd be at a different place
Playoffs
in
started
August,
today.
and we could start on green.
Right.
We could be.
Absolutely.
Good.
Right. If there's not another case in Harrison County, I would expect us not to start on
If we
green.
don't have any cases between now and August, we could start on green.
Absolutely.
And then we would wait till flu season hit.
but it'd have to be a student in Harrison County, not just a.
Or an employee,
Or an employee. and
or a
not
parent
government.
who has had exposure to
You
that
need,
student.
like you said, was it 14 students, or is it just one student?
So Code Blue would be one that directly impacts.
That'd be a confirmed case.
Correct. Documented through the health department, through a laboratory test, that directly impacts our personnel, our students.
And I think if there's a confirmed case, there would be a demand by the public for
Sure.
us to do it. And I think your point's well taken, Kristen, perhaps Donna, that, well, we have it, I see the code green is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's if we started today, but very well, we could start
We could.
just
Green.
normal. So that's available to us, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered,
Absolutely.
given the presentation, why we would be starting.
Yeah.
I was taking it as in August, we'd be starting blue with so many unknown factors out there, basically. That's all I was asking, because like you said, if we don't have any more cases, why in the world would we
Start on
start this whole fearful, scaring our kids situation again, and just not start normally? It's
Absolutely.
better for families, students, and personnel.
I'm just thinking of little kids coming in, and you're like, hey, wear a mask. And here is there your teacher wearing a mask. Oh, and here's your bubble. I'm like,
We are not gonna be the mask police either. We are gonna recommend it.
And I don't want to be,
And
but
I
exactly.
mean, I can't make your child wear a mask. If you as a parent choose not to, if your child doesn't have immune problems or health issues, and you and your child have that conversation, and we're not in code orange where we're gonna be strongly recommending, because we have huge community spread, I'm not going to make your child wear a mask, but that's gonna be a conversation you and your child have to have. So, I keep on having administrators ask me the question, are we gonna make the children wear a mask? And I'm gonna say, you know, the health professionals that are giving us recommendations recommend it.
Now, see, that's all I was saying too, when I said here's 50-50 here.
I mean,
Only
it's
that
hard.
people have their, I don't wanna be a mask police.
We are not going to
And
be.
that was my point, because there are two very different views, and both are right, and, you know, I just don't think that we can sit
There
there.
will be children that need to wear masks that have health problems.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
there will be staff that should wear masks that have health problems.
Exactly.
We do know that 7% of our student population is medically fragile, and that's been documented. Those are recent statistics that Ms. Sperry and our staff just pulled together weeks ago. So we do know that 7% of our student population in Harrison County is medically fragile, that they have a plan for, and meet the guidelines for that. The other thing I think is noteworthy to note as well is this board could decide to dispense with code orange altogether, and we either do code green, blue, and red. There's no in between. So you certainly would have the opportunity to take things off the table, because orange does get a little more difficult to enforce because of the practicality of it on buses, in classrooms, for parents. You know, if
I
my
think that's a
child
great
is,
idea.
yeah, if my child is going to school on Tuesday and Thursday, what am I doing with work?
It's like a
You know,
traffic
so-
light, you have
yeah.
green go,
Yeah.
stop at median.
Yeah.
I think 4 is a lot, and it does get complicated.
Yeah, so the practicality of orange is very difficult for our school system. And so this board could decide to dispense and just do green, blue, or red. That's another option. I know
But
Dr.
that's still
Manchin said that
ultimately,
today.
whether you have 3, 4, or whatever, it's ultimately then the superintendent or the board's decision to
Yes,
go
sir.
to one of those. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, in my estimation, you know, if you had 6 of them, you'd be better. You'd have 6 options rather than, so
Right.
I'd rather not limit it. I mean, have orange and you never use orange.
The thing with orange is if we would go, if we would go toward orange, we do need to involve our administrators more quickly rather than later, because they are going to have to identify those cohorts of students, look at their schedules, and we're going to have to notify,
It
you know,
became
families.
problematic in our discussion today in that people, parents who are working,
Need to prepare.
you know, now your child doesn't go to school on Wednesday, it goes on Thursday. And I'd be very reticent about doing orange, but you're
Yeah.
right.
The
If
practicality
you make
of
it
it's difficult.
available, if it's available, well, yeah, don't take it off the table. Well, that's for a further discussion of this board. And I thought it's been a healthy discussion. I
Yeah,
really
absolutely,
do.
absolutely. It's been a good
I
discussion.
really do. Good
Thank
job.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right, that brings us down to personnel.
Mr. President, I make a motion. I move that pursuant to Chapter 69A-4, subsection 2 of the West Virginia Code, the board go into executive session to discuss personnel and personnel matters which, if discussed in public, might affect adversely the reputation of any person.
Personnel motion has been made by Mr. Hamrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the personnel motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will be in executive session.
Hey, Jody.
Mr. Hamrick has made a motion to return. Ms. Messenger has seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are back in regular session. At this point in time, there is a personnel agenda. Is there a motion to accept the personnel agenda with a personnel adjustment for the professional recommendation of Tammy Leesburg from principal at Adamston Elementary to principal full-time at Big Elm Elementary?
So moved.
Amy Hinkle from English teacher full-time at Robert C. Byrd to English teacher full-time at United High, and the service personnel recommendation to pull Richard Everly Jr. So I'm assuming Mr. Doherty has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the motion. Any discussion?
Yes. My only discussion on this, and I think I've discussed it with most here, with Ms. Leesburg going to Big Elm, and she's one of our great principals, that obviously leaves a vacancy at Adamston. We know that we are combining Adamston and Wilsonburg in the very near future. Those plans are going forward. I want to make sure we can explore the possibility if we put a permanent sub in as principal for that time rather than hire someone, because at that point, if we hire a principal and then we open up the new school, you know, one of those two principals is going to be the principal, and then we're going to be one over on principal that we're going to have to find a place for.
Well, Mrs. Stetler and her crack team of research has got the information for you.
Yeah, we can place a
as 1 year only, and it can't be considered a permanent sub. We'd have to be careful. We can do a 1 year contract with someone, we just can't post it that way. And then at the end of the year, we have to do some kind of action.
Are we allowed to do a teaching principal? I know that's been done in the
Not a
past.
teaching principal.
That's the old
Because
days.
of the size of the building.
I just know we're gonna end up
We
being
can't do
over
that.
one principal
Yeah,
when
we-
it's all said and done, that we're gonna have to find a place for. And you just hope that there's a retirement or something, or else you're gonna have a principal that's then going back, because it's gonna be
Right.
1 year either way.
You could be,
How
I
did
mean,
we?
I just didn't know if we could get
how
a
did we
retired
handle-
principal.
How did we handle Carol Crawford when she helped out over at Nutter Fort?
oh, she's just a
She was
retired,
already
she was in a,
retired.
she was in a maternity leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in a,
Principal was,
yeah, this is not putting a sub goes into somebody's position, well, that position's no longer there. It's a vacancy now, so you're not,
Hire someone
You know,
that's on
putting a
maternity
salary.
leave and then replace them.
so I mean, there are ways that we can look at that. There's gonna have to be some action at the end of the year. We could say it's gonna be 1 year, you're just gonna have to, have somebody agree.
And we could
when they-
articulate.
So we
when
don't
they-
have-
It'll be
yes,
1 year.
During the interview, you could agree to say, you know what, you're gonna have this position for 1 year, and then you're gonna, but we
So-
can't post it as 1 year.
But it don't have to be posted right now, does it?
Doesn't have to be.
I mean, I don't
Well, what
think
I'm
so,
saying
because
is,
we're
till
going-
we,
we're going in-
researched everything and can come up with a, specific way that it can be done.
Well.
Or do you feel like you already-
I know, I mean, it's gonna have to be posted, we're gonna have to.
Well, then if a principal, theoretically, a principal with, that's not in the system or has been in the system, is not, could bid into that job, and then they could knock Laura Dick out of the job at Gore.
It's a possibility,
So
but
she-
whatever, the
yeah.
superintendent will make the recommendation for
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
position.
Okay.
And if you're in the interview and you're making it clear that it's gonna be a 1 year position, you can,
That's just my only question, try to save some money down the road.
Okay.
right.
Okay. On a unrelated personnel matter, I would like to make an announcement in regards to the superintendency vacancy in Harrison County Board of Education. At this point in time,
Is she listening?
hey, Kaylee, this is for you. We're making an announcement in regards to the vacancy of the superintendent of Harrison County. At this point in time, we will be accepting applications for a 1-year contract for the superintendent of Harrison County Schools. And I'll ask that they be sent to the board office at the board address, attention Board President Frank Devano. And what we will do is go over them at our next meeting.
You need them by.
And we need them by Monday at 4 PM. And then we will interview at our next meeting. We'll set up the interviews for our next meeting, and then hopefully we will be able
On
to
the
choose
10th.
on the 10th.
Which is Wednesday.
Wednesday the 10th, and hopefully we will be able to choose a superintendent for a 1-year contract on Wednesday the 10th.
And then Wednesday 10th at 4:30 is the interviews.
Wednesday the 10th, 4:30 starts the interviews, but once we get the applications, we'll set those times up. But the general meeting will start at 4. The interviews will start at 4:30,
And they will take place.
and they will take place upstairs.
Come out of executive session and announce what you decide, or we just do interviews?
Maybe.
No. Hopefully, our intent as a board, from what we've discussed, is to come out of the executive session and announce who's going to fill the role for the year. And we are going to look at possibly the top 5 applications. We'll narrow it down to the top 5.
For the interviews on Wednesday.
Yes.
It's our hope that in the time left with Dr. Manchin, whoever's selected will have, a couple weeks to.
Yeah.
To kind of get acclimated.
The shadowing.
Yeah, so, okay.
Call for the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hoag?
Children of peace, go in peace.
Great. We didn't go to adjourn. That was
Oh,
just a
I'm
vote
so
for
sorry,
one.
that's right, yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Mr. Doherty has made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hamrick has seconded the motion. Mr. Hoag?
Children of peace, go in peace, the second
All those in
time.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.